Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp, and today I'm going to be talking about how to pray and how to be successful in prayer. So prayer is very common in particularly the Abrahamic faiths, but it's also a feature of Western esotericism, yet it's a feature that seems to be quite underrated compared to stuff like magic and tarot and all of that sort of thing. But many of the practices that I've discussed on this channel, which are really important practices in the Western esoteric tradition, such as attaining knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel and engaging in Enochian magic and similar, are very dependent upon long periods of intense and fervent prayer. So it's really something that we need to have a good grip of if we're going to go deeply into the mysteries. You know, we've probably all grown up in a culture where at some point in history, in the not too distant past or even in the present, there was a nominal dominant religion of the society, and prayer is most likely a feature of that religion. So we all know what prayer is, but how many of us really know how to pray? And if we've had a religious upbringing, how many of us were ever really taught how to pray properly? I know for myself, I was brought up a Catholic, and I went to church on Sundays. I went to catechism classes as well on the weekend, and we were always asked to pray in Mass, and we were taught to pray in our day-to-day lives. But I still can't think of a time where we were really taught what that means in a serious way. Prayer was always just assumed knowledge that people would know how to pray, and the only way to really learn was by observing the example of others, which was not very good. You had many of the parish priests were simply just repeating words in a very mechanical fashion, in a very rote fashion. There was no inspiration in them. There was no spirit in them behind those words. It was just going through meaningless ritual and repetition. And so for a long time, that's all that prayer was to me. I tried to pray every night, but it was just like reading off a list of the things that I wished that God would give me. And it was just repetitive, and it didn't have anything meaningful behind it, because that is how I learnt to pray in the church. So for much of the time, I expected prayer to be nothing more than the empty and uninspiring recital of words, and much of the time it was, but there was the odd occasion in church where I would feel a sense of grace overcome me, and I would feel like I'm in the presence of something awesome, and I would be able to touch something divine, finally, through my efforts at prayer. And when I came later to Western esotericism, and in particular angelic magic, and it was necessary for me to pray and pray and pray, I clung to those experiences and tried to recreate those experiences in an effort to reach a prayerful state and to better my practice of prayer. And now I've reached a point where I feel quite confident in praying. I still have prayer sessions from time to time that are quite lackluster, particularly if I've got a daily routine, and some days, sometimes for many weeks, I'm just not feeling it. But I'm much more confident in praying than I was when I was younger, and I feel I can pass on some of my tips about how to pray well that I've picked up for some of you that might be wondering that yourself because you've never learnt anywhere else. So my first tip for how to pray well would be, don't ask for anything. You know, you see a lot of these mainline Christians, particularly today, and whenever they pray, it's always, "Dear God, give me this, give me this, give me that. I want this, I want that." And it's like that shopping list approach of all the things that you think you deserve. And this is particularly rife now that we have modern phenomena like the prosperity gospel. So we have this idea that praying means asking God to give us things because we deserve it, because we have a better relationship with Him than other people do. So we should get the nice things. First of all, notwithstanding, that's just not a spiritual way of thinking. It's based in ego and spiritual pride. It lacks a sense of humility and openness to the divine to give you what you need, and a gratitude for what you have. It's also ineffective a lot of the time. Prayer is not the best way to get things that you want in life. And look, I'm not knocking using spiritual practices to improve your material conditions, because we live in an unjust world, and sometimes it's necessary to improve our situation so that we're better able to do the work. But if you're going to do that, magic is a much better method of doing that, because it involves will and intention that is focused and directed. Whereas when you're praying, it's passive. You're kind of passively asking for something that you don't have the power to grant yourself. And so often, because there's no force behind it, and because the thing that's listening wouldn't give you what you wanted anyway, because it's trying to elevate you beyond those things, most of the time you won't get it. And if you look at studies on prayer among Christians, a lot of the time it doesn't make a difference because of those reasons, and also because quite possibly the prayers are insincere, and the people doing them are Christian because that's how they were brought up, but don't really believe what they're doing or saying. That could be a factor as well. But regardless, it's not the best use of prayer to ask for things. The best kind of prayer I've found is a prayer where you ask for nothing, where your only objective is the prayer itself, to get into a prayerful state and to abide in the presence of the divine, whether you want to label that God or whatever, and just being there and being with God, with the divine, is enough. And when you go into it without attachments like that, then you can be fully open to the kind of satisfaction that does not depend on worldly concerns, that is on offer for you if you want it. And it can be granted to you in the form of grace when you're in that prayerful state. And, if you haven't quite warmed to the idea of renouncing worldliness and seeking only the divine, perhaps a sweetener is to think about the fact, and this has been my experience, that whatever you think you want, whatever you think will be good for you in your life, I guarantee that whatever the divine offers you instead will be much, much better. And whatever solutions might emerge in your mind as a result of being in a state of prayer are much better. And this sort of silent prayer is a good way of answering complicated questions as well. Often we have really vexing questions in our lives that we just don't know the answer to. And sometimes we can give those to God. We can give those to the divine during prayer, and astonishingly, we can get an answer that we've never even considered before when we do that. And there's a reason why this works. It's like if you have a knot that's really tangled, and you try and untangle it, but you're frantic while you're doing it, the knot's just going to get more tangled. But if you're able to just chill out and just quietly observe the knot, then and just slowly and organically sort of, tug at it to find the weak points, then in good time the knot will unfurl itself much more easily than if you're really struggling with it. And you might even think of a time when you lost your keys or something, and you're like, oh, I don't know where I put these, where are they? And you're panicking and you're looking around, you just can't find them. And then the moment you say, okay, fine, I don't care anymore, I'm going to stop looking. At that moment you have a thought, wait a minute, oh, that's right, I left them on this table over here. Once the mind gets out of the way and stops making things worse by fretting over things, the answer can emerge naturally. Everything that we need will emerge naturally. Our awareness of it will emerge naturally if we let it. If we're really in tune, in harmony with our environment, in the way that the divine wants us to be. And we can step outside ourself, our ego, so we can see solutions that might not be palatable to our more selfish desires. And this is what happens when you pose a question to the divine in prayer. And the way to do that is not to fret over the question during the prayer, but just give it to the divine and then just let it sit, and just sit with it, but be at peace and detached from any need to see an outcome to that activity. And then quite often you'll see the answer emerge, or perhaps it'll emerge over the few days following the prayer. The second tip that I would give about praying is that it's not about the words. More important than the words that you speak is what is in your heart. In those examples I gave earlier, when I was a child in the church, observing the priests, many of them, there were some good ones, but a lot of them were very uninspired. And how I used to pray myself, it was just empty words. It was just saying things with nothing behind it, because that's the way to do it. That's the way we've been taught to pray, so that's the way that it's done. But that's just empty. It's just circular, and there's nothing in the middle of that gives life to that. And what's important about prayer, what's more important by far than whatever words you speak, is the feeling that you have. You need to have a kind of a yearning for the divine, a love for the divine, an adoration for the divine, and a yearning to be in its presence, and to be one with it, and to feel its grace. And sometimes words can help with that. There are many beautiful psalms which get us closer to that feeling if we let it. But no words are necessary at all. Some of our closest relationships in life, our closest friendships, are with animals who can't talk at all. They just come sit with us and bond with us, and that's enough. No words are necessary to express that love and that adoration that they have for us. More so dogs than cats, but cats have their moments. And so we can pray, and we can have that state of love and yearning without expressing it in words at all. So don't think about what you're going to say. Think about how you're going to cultivate that feeling in your heart. My third recommendation would be, don't be superficial in the practice. This can be tempting, particularly if you're doing a regular practice of daily prayer or something like that. You've had a big day, you just want to get it over with. I can be guilty of this myself, still to this day. But if you really want the prayer to be effective, you really want it. It can't just be another thing that you need to do. It needs to be something you really want and you really look forward to. And when you're in it, you're not just waiting for it to finish. You're staying with it for as long as you want and as long as you feel is right. And if you start to get into an altered state and a prayerful state and a contemplative state, go deeper into it. Go as deep as you can and stay as deep as you can for as long as you can to get the most out of your prayer, and only then finish the practice. The fourth point I would say I've already kind of touched on, which is do it because you want to do it, not because you feel obligated to do it. And this is another reason why so many of my prayers in the church were ineffective. I was doing it just because I was told to do it, not because I saw the intrinsic value in doing it. Now this one can be hard as well, because like I said, if you've developed a routine of regular prayer, there's going to be periods of dryness. That's very normal in a kind of regular practice of prayer. Your heart's not going to be in it for sometimes weeks or even months at a time. But there's always the drought always breaks at some point, and and that love and that adoration returns. But it can be hard, and when you first start praying seriously, you don't understand what the point is. You don't understand what all the fuss is about, because you've never actually had an experience of grace or of the incredible peace or love that comes from prayer. So you've got nothing to compare it to. You can't see the point. But once you do have those early experiences of grace and you feel how incredible it is, you'll find yourself wanting it more. And then you'll find yourself wanting to pray more. And then you can develop a natural kind of yearning for the practice of prayer. This brings me to my next tip for a successful prayer. Be on the lookout for the state of grace. If you feel a state of grace, it's a sign that the prayer has been a success, that you have successfully entered the prayerful state. And you will know that you've entered a state of grace because the feeling of grace is unique. Nothing else in the world is like it. It's got a unique quality to it, which is unmistakable, and which nothing in the world in fact can offer. And that is why it is unique and set apart. And I'm going to explain exactly what it's like to feel that sense of grace. So the first sign that you've entered a state of grace is that you feel a perfect satisfaction. You're satisfied because you're satisfied. You're not satisfied because of this or that. You contrast this to worldly satisfaction. You want something in life. You want something in your environment that you feel you need. You get that, and then you feel stimulated. You feel a momentary burst of pleasure, and then it's gone. And then you feel like you haven't had enough, and so you look for something else to satisfy you. So that's an imperfect form of satisfaction, whereas when you have the satisfaction of grace, you're just happy to be there. It doesn't matter what situation you're in, nothing about your environment matters. Only the feeling matters. And so long as the feeling it continues, you're happy. And even when the feeling ends, you don't feel like you need it to come back. Or you might feel some kind of a yearning, but it's not like, it doesn't leave you with the same emptiness and like you're unsatisfied that satisfaction in the world does. You feel like your cup is full. Like for the time being, you're satisfied. And so when you can identify that, you know that you've entered a state of grace. The other thing that helps you to identify grace is that it's a feeling that feels like it could go on forever. It doesn't have a use-by date. Every other experience of satisfaction in the world, you know that it comes to an end eventually. If you're dancing the night away, in the club, you know that it's going to close at some point. If you're drinking a drink, you know that cup's going to be empty eventually, and so on. Whereas the kind of ocean of love and peace that you are immersed in when you feel grace goes on forever and ever. It never ends. And you get a sense of that when you're in it. And then even when you leave the state of grace, you can enter it at any time and know that it's going to have that, it's going to still be there, and it's going to have that eternal nature to it. And so there's nothing in the world that's like that. And that's another way that you know that you've prayed successfully, when you've had that experience, and you'll know it when you have it. And my final tip for how to pray successfully is pray often. So that's it. That's how to pray successfully. I hope that you enjoyed that video. Please leave a like if you did, and subscribe to my channel if you want to support my work Please also subscribe to me on Odyssey. Leave any comments if you have any. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.